Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of Newverse Creative. This is Ben Wan here, and I'm here with the man himself, Tim Maxwell.
Hello. What's up?
So we're here to talk about the behind the scenes, the making of Batman 3 slash Batman Forever, the audio drama. And I've been excited to talk about this because I know this is an idea of yours for us to kind of do a behind the scenes episode, really go into the history of this project in real life, as well as the history of the project we did together. So I'm excited. I know you have a bunch of questions.
Yeah, it's crazy because you're right. I did kind of mention like we need to have a conversation about this.
Mhm,
It was a project that I was excited about doing for the longest time. We've done a lot of like unproduced scripts. We've done a lot of like what ifs, and
mhm,
this was just one of the biggest what ifs is what if Tim Burton had made a Batman 3 or Batman Forever, and we'll definitely get to a part where you debunk some of the
mhm,
theories and some of the things that people say. But
mhm,
I think the cool thing that we wanted to accomplish, and what a lot of people have done with like fan posters and stuff, is just the imagination of a different Batman 3. What if Tim Burton never not abandoned, but never left the Batman franchise? What if Michael
mhm,
Keaton stayed on board? Well, of course, the tone would have been different, obviously, different voice, different music, because when Batman Forever happened, a lot changed. We got a new
mhm,
Batman actor who played him a little bit different, a little bit differently. You could definitely speak to that now.
mhm,
But then also a whole different theme that was completely different in a different, vernacular, and so we'll talk about some of that. But
mhm,
what I wanted to ask you is, how did you approach writing this? Because this came down to, I reached out to you one day and said, "Hey, would you write
mhm,
a script for this project?" Because
mhm.
obviously no one knows Batman like you do.
Of course.
Um, yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, I want to know, how did you approach writing this script? Because you didn't just adapt it from one script, because there is an
Mhm,
early script which you can definitely explain, but you actually pulled from multiple scripts, right, to
mhm.
put this together.
That's right. Yeah.
Mhm.
It was kind of this was a version of what I was already kind of doing on the side because I'm that much of a Batman geek. For those who don't know me outside of the audios, I do the podcast superhero stuff you should know, which is how Tim and I kind of met. We had like pretty much talked a little bit in the past about you were adapting some of the scripts that we were covering. And I always thought that was amazing because when I was doing those script deep dives on my podcast, it's a conversation between myself and my friend Andrew on these scripts that were never made. And it's his commentary and his reactions to me sharing it. But I always was just like, what if we dramatized it? Like, though, like, what if we actually acted this out? That would be really cool. But like, I also need like 20 different friends who are actors to put this together. And, just be kind of cool to do like a table read type of thing, nothing too big or anything. And then I saw what you were doing over at Newverse Creative, and I was like, okay, that's cooler than my idea. That's cooler than my idea. It's the audio dramas of all these, and so when we were brainstorming it, one of the things that I had been doing for a while was putting together like what is the ultimate cut of Batman Forever with all the different scripts that were out there. There are three scripts that I used for this audio drama that are what's available. One is the early script by just the Bachelors, so that's Lee and Janet Scott Batchelor. They took the first pass on the writing. And then there's an updated draft with Akiva Goldsman when Akiva Goldsman was brought in to do the sort of the rewrites stuff that he added. And then there was a third draft that popped up online a few years ago from Mine Kidzag was had access to it. You can tell that it's like a production draft because all the pages are different colors and stuff. But that's
Mhm.
apparently what they used. That is the shooting script. That is what they used before going in, and so it's the closest you can get script wise to the Schumacher cut. So when going through it, I was like, okay, yes, we could just adapt the Bachelor's script as is, but the big reason why there's this big fan movement for release the Schumacher cut is the stuff that Akiva Goldsman added to it. The Bachelor's draft does have Bruce going into the Batcave to sort of reconnect with his Batman self. He loses his memory of being Batman temporarily and then sees the giant bat. But Akiva Goldsman adds this whole other thing in the rewrites of, oh, like Bruce has this traumatic memory of feeling guilty of reading this entry in his father's journal, And it's unlocked later on when he goes back into the Batcave and he reads the journal and finds out what it actually says. And what that helps him do is heal, essentially. And I thought that was amazing. And when we shared it on our podcast, like so many people were finding that amazing. And I was like, I can't just cut that. I have to have that in here because that didn't make it into the final film. That's the big reason why people want this Schumacher cut. And it would be a disservice if we don't have it. So it kind of became a whole game of, I didn't really feel like I wrote this so much as I just pick and chose the best bits, right, of each thing. I knew for sure the Akiva Goldsman subplot was going to be in there. And then some of the other stuff were things that I personally preferred in the Bachelor draft because it's just like, look, if you want Batman Forever, you've got the movie. The movie exists. You can watch that. And there's the kids' audio version from the 90s that does exist. You can listen to it on YouTube. So it's not like there was a huge desire to really just do the theatrical version of Batman Forever on audio. We wanted it to be different. And so there were certain things from the Bachelor draft that I personally really liked that I said, hey, like, what if this was in there too? And so it was picking and choosing that, as well as like certain lines. There are ones that if you're a Forever fan, you like really know what's being said, and there were like slightly different variations of it that I thought like, oh, like it'd be cool just to have this alternate universe version of it. So sometimes some of the choices were down to what I thought was like should have stayed in the movie, and other ones were ones where I'm just like, all right, this is like just as good, but it's an alternate, and I kind of like this alternate thing. So that's like the Robin. The name Robin in the final film comes from a nickname that he was given by his family. It's very poignant, and one of the early versions where that was a thing, right, where that came from his family. But in this one, one of the original ideas from The Bachelors was the whole connection to Robin Hood, that his costume reminds Batman of Robin Hood, and that does harken back to the early Bill Finger comic where that was the justification for why he was named Robin. And it also kind of leads into this like training montage with Bruce and just really cool Bruce mentoring Dick Grayson type of stuff that I wanted to put in there too. So it made sense. It wasn't necessarily one that I thought was better so much as it was a cool alternative to provide. So those were kind of the big reasons behind some of the choices was either, hey, like this is what people would really want from the original scripts to get dramatized, or these are things that I thought were a little bit better, or these are things that are like different enough that it just adds to the experience that you're not just listening to the movie. This is an alternate take, an early take on it.
Yeah. And so there's definitely a distinction between the script that you wrote and,
Mhm,
the actual theatrical film. Like
mhm,
you mentioned, one of them, the introduction to Robin is a little bit different in the movie.
mhm.
Bruce Wayne is really apprehensive about bringing him on as a sidekick. In this one, he kind of brings him on and then immediately is like, what am I doing? Maybe this is
Yeah.
not such a great idea. So that's a different approach. And also where he gets the name Robin, that's totally different. I
Mhm,
I, I do like in the final film how it is a little bit of an emotional connection to his family.
mhm.
I think when you're watching a movie, you always want to, you want something to tug on your heartstrings a little bit, something that really brings it
Oh yeah.
home.
Mhm,
But I think, but like you mentioned, when it does harken back to the comics, there's a little bit more of a reward for, us
mhm.
comic book fans. So I like both. But another thing that's kind of different is the final confrontation takes place. It takes place on Claw Island, but in this one is a little bit more of a caricature kind of Riddler land.
Mhm.
It's a little more animated. It's a little bit different. So I'm glad that you included that version. So again, you want to present something that's, obviously a lot of it's recognizable. I think I
Mhm.
even got a comment that's like, this is just Batman Forever in the style of the Burton verse. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, if you listen, there's a lot more to it. There's some differences. It's not Batman Forever as you remember it.
Mhm. Yeah. Right.
And so I thought that was really cool. Of course, a lot of it's the same. There's a lot of the
Mhm.
same dialogue. But let's kind of go to the Burton verse version for a moment because that's
Sure.
what we did first.
Mhm.
That's kind of how we were presenting it as, hey, let's just imagine, you know, Tim Burton makes Batman Forever or Batman 3. I just decided to call it Batman 3 because
Yeah. Yeah.
who knows what Tim Burton would have called it his third Batman movie. And now we have, we have Shadows, we have Echoes, we have
Mhm,
comic books that are kind of exploring
mhm.
the Burton verse, and I think that's really cool too. Um,
It's also the
so
official working title. The official working title was Batman 3.
yes,
So
you're right.
that's
Yeah,
another
and
aspect of that too.
that's true. Yeah, that first script was Bat. In the very next script, is it titled Batman Forever? In the next like production script
I
that you mentioned?
think ooh, that's a good question, Tim. You stumped me on that one. Let me look into it right now.
Okay.
I think it is Batman Forever, but let me take a look right now, on that, or it could just be untitled. But let me see. It was for sure Batman 3 at one point, and you can even see it on some of the concept art or promo stuff. It's the title says Batman 3, but like the B is written in a way that there's like a 3. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah.
Very cool. That's clever. I like that.
Yeah, this one says Batman 3 as well by Akiva Goldsman, but I don't know how much of that is somebody just wrote that in or if that's
Mm,
actually on the draft, because like sometimes
yeah.
it is a transcription, somebody typed it up or it's
Yeah,
not the copy. So
yeah,
I don't
and
know.
at the end of the day, again, who knows what Tim Burton would have called a third Batman movie? It probably
Sure,
wouldn't have
sure.
been Batman 3 because
Yeah,
it
yeah.
went from Batman to Batman Returns, and then it would have been Batman something,
Mhm. Yeah.
but just for the sake of keeping it generic and just our
Mhm.
imagination going.
Yeah.
And so you wrote the script and we began to cast, and it was a project that was taking a long time for us to accomplish because I had gotten very very busy, and so we were kind of working on it for a long time.
Mhm.
But we had a really huge missing link. We didn't have Batman. So
Mm.
we had all of our voice actors committed to it. We actually had all the voices and the narration, had all that for a very very long time, but I could not get Batman locked in. Now we have a guy that's played Michael Keaton's Batman many many times for us. His name is Brett Solferino,
Mhm.
and he's amazing. He's done a lot of voices for us. He's done a lot of different characters, and he's such an impressionist and a great one at that. He's done Robert Downey Jr. He's
Mhm.
done Christian Bale Batman for us, and he does all those masterfully. He's amazing. He should be working in Hollywood doing
Yeah, for
overdubs and
sure.
stuff. Yeah,
For
he's so
sure.
good.
Mhm.
But he's a stand up he's a stand up comic. He's got a job. He's got a life. And so voice acting for him wasn't something that he was able to do as much anymore. And I
Mhm.
just kind of kept waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And it finally got to the point where I'm like, I need to fill this role. And Michael Keaton's not answering my calls. So
Why
I
not?
need to figure, yeah. And so I had reached out to a couple people,
Mhm.
and just kind of desperate, like, hey, do you think you could maybe do a Michael Keaton voice? I really want it to be convincing enough to where it sounds like Michael Keaton, sounds like it's in that world. And then, one day I think we were emailing back and forth, and I
Mhm.
just said, hey, looking for someone to voice Batman. And I could just kind of, or Michael Keaton's Batman, and I could just kind of hear it in your voice a little bit. And I think you might be able to do this. But the other reason I asked is because I'm like, Ben knows this character like no one else. He's probably watched these movies 100 million times.
Mhm.
He knows the cadence. It's probably in his brain somewhere to project that voice. I'm like, I'm just gonna ask
Mhm.
and throw it out there. And you graciously said, yeah, that you'd give it a shot. And of course, I'm just like grasping at straws at this point, just
Mhm.
desperately trying to find someone, and wasn't even sure if you would take it seriously, if you would, be serious about it or not.
Mhm.
But you reminded me that you had actually mentioned something about voicing him back when we were doing like what project was that? The
Case of the
case of the
Chemical Syndicate. I
yeah,
know you were
that's the one.
yeah. Yeah, that
And
was
I
one
hadn't even
where
remembered that. I'd forgotten about that.
'cause I
Um,
didn't know if I was just like, like, I don't know if I'm the right feel for it, like, I don't know if I'm right for it 'cause I've
mhm,
done Batman for my podcast. We had done a bunch of sketches, so it's like a comedic
yeah,
Batman, but my approach
yeah,
is different from how Keaton did it. It was more of a, like, I'm just trying to do it was like a comedic Kevin Conroy thing. Like, the first sketch we
yeah,
did was, like, me trying to, like, Batman's just taking lunch orders from the Justice League, and he's getting frustrated because nobody wants to, like, he's talking about General Tso's chicken, "Come on, Clark," like, that type of stuff. So I'm like, "That's
yeah,
not really Keaton-esque, that's Conroy,
yeah,
you know?"
yeah, and obviously this, and especially because I mean you wrote it. I know you want it to sound fantastic,
Mhm.
so you wouldn't want to lend your voice to it if you don't feel like you could
Right. Yeah.
do a good job. Like I desperately wanted to play Riddler for the Schumacher version
Mhm.
because I
Oh
love, love,
wow.
love Jim Carrey. And I'm always impersonating the Grinch and trying to do Jim Carrey-ish stuff. I just love the way he acts.
Oh, that's
But
awesome.
yeah, but I couldn't have done it. So I played Robin instead. And so, but anyways, let's go
Well,
back to
you're a
where we
good
were.
Robin still, but
Oh, thank you, thank you.
I didn't know that you wanted to do Riddler too.
No, I wish I could have, and I was like, it was one of those things where I kept like trying it just on my own. I'd be driving or something, and I'm trying to do a Jim Carrey-ish
Mhm.
Riddler voice, and I'm like, I just don't know if it's working. But, anyways, I know that you want it to sound good, so
Mhm.
I know you probably wouldn't want to lend your voice unless you feel you could do it. So you submitted kind of like an audition,
Mhm.
but then you told me you're like, hey, I'm kind of slipping into Val Kilmer. And
Yeah.
I remember when I saw your email, Ben, I was like, "No, you're not. Like, there's no way you could do Keaton and Kilmer. And all this time we've been writing all these projects, doing all this Keaton and Kilmer stuff, and you've been holding out on me. I'm like, you're pulling my leg, bro." And
Mhm.
so you send me an audition for both because you knew we were gonna do also a
Mhm.
Schumacher Batman Forever version of this as well
Mhm.
afterwards. And so that in mind, you recorded I think a little demo for both.
Mhm.
And I remember getting that, and I listened to the Keaton one first, or maybe you only sent me the Keaton one first. I can't remember, but I
I
know
think I
I
sent
listened.
both. I sent both. Yeah.
Did you? Okay, but I remember distinctly listening to the Keaton version first, and I was like, oh my gosh, and it made me think of, and I think you were going for an older Keaton in that particular clip,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh my gosh, like I just saw The Flash, the movie The Flash with Keaton in it, and
Mhm.
I just saw Michael Keaton, and I was like, that's Ben. I
Mhm.
just couldn't believe it. I was blown away.
Oh,
And then, of
thanks.
course, you had a couple other demos, and then the
Mhm.
Kilmer one, which was also spot on. And it was, for me, it was first and foremost, it was like a sigh of relief because I was like, well, I found my Batman, you know, and like we can actually finish this audio
Mhm.
drama. So I was so pumped, and I was like, I have Keaton's Batman for this one. I got Kilmer's Batman for the Forever version, and it just blessed my socks off. I was so happy, and then that's how you got the role, right?
It is, and
Yeah,
first off, thank you very much for the kind words, and of course,
yeah,
helping to make a dream come true because it was one where I think I needed to be a little bit coaxed into it because you're right in the sense that like I wrote it, I want it to sound good, and I wasn't like I didn't quite have the faith in myself that I could do it the first time that we talked about it in like case of the chemical syndicate. And also that was like I hadn't done any voices for you at that point. So I'm just like, I don't want to be like, oh, like I can do it. And then I I fall flat on my face the first time I ever submit any voices to you. But
yeah,
I had done different characters to you with you for a while. So I think that not only gave you a better idea of what I could do, but gave me a better idea of what I could do for you to lead into asking me about that. And then from my perspective, I don't know how much I told you in terms of how much time that took. What I sent you was the product of about 10 hours.
oh wow,
um, um, because, like you said, I wanted to get it right. And I'm like, look, it's either I get it right or I don't send it at all. And
Mhm.
I wouldn't have sent it if I didn't think that I was like close.
Yeah,
So the reason why it took so long was because I just needed to, even though I had spent obviously years and years having seen these movies, it's different when you're like, okay, I got to sound like this guy.
yeah,
How am I gonna do it?
yeah,
So, and not only is there the shadow of Michael Keaton on this one, but there's the shadow of the fact that Brett has done such a fantastic job as Keaton in the audios already.
oh
And
yeah,
you see the comments too, and just like, oh, like he sounds just like Keaton and stuff. And I'm like, I'm filling in. It feels like multiple shoes at this point. And
hmm,
so I started listening to Brett's take, and just a few minutes in to one of the ones that we collaborated that was Keaton, which was the Vow from the Grave. I listened to that, and I was like, I'm not gonna be able to do the same thing. Like he's got. I think some of it might have to do with Keaton's from Pennsylvania. I don't know where Brett's from, but like there's a little bit of his natural voice. There's something to it that I just didn't think that like Brett has just this natural Keaton sounding voice when he does the Keaton voice, and so
yeah,
automatically when I was listening to it, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to replicate that approach to it. And also at a certain point, how many degrees of separation am I doing? It's me pretending to be Brett Sulfurino, pretending to be Michael Keaton, pretending to be Bruce Wayne, pretending to be Batman. It's like it's deeper than Tropic
mm,
Thunder at a certain point. So I was like, all right, scrap all that. What is like, what's my take? You know, what certain things can I pick up? So I was just watching clips and clips and clips of
Mm,
more of the Bruce Wayne scenes actually than the Batman scenes, because the Batman one I kind of already felt confident I could do the Flash, older Keaton type of thing. You know, like, you want to get nuts, let's get nuts. Like I could do that, but I was like, like regular voice, like normal Keaton from '90s. I was like, oh, I don't know, because I don't sound or talk like that. So I started picking up on, like, listening and picking up on different things, and I think I first the first thing that I got is what I called the preamble, which is like how he starts certain sentences. So it's like, so, well, you know, I mean, like, it's all that type of like
mm,
beginning stuff, and I was like, okay, I can kind of do that, and then listening more and more is like, occasionally he like mumbles or talks on. A lot of times I'm like talking out the side of my mouth, in order to sort of replicate a little bit of it. The
mm,
whisper was a big thing when it came to the Batman stuff. He whispers a lot more as Batman than the other versions, um, or even compared to when he did it when he came back in the Flash. So that type of stuff. And then another thing that I realized was important was, this is a this is an audio medium, so it's not visual.
mm,
And so sometimes, in order to help replicate or make you feel like you're seeing the character, you kind of have to sound as if you have to sound like the face. And the way that, what I mean by that is that there's certain facial expressions that he does, and one of them is the, you want to get nuts face. So he's like that kind of face that
mm,
happens at times. And I realized to produce that through sound was, kind of this elongated, um, S or TS type of thing. So like there's a line in the script where he says, somewhere in the night it stopped being a choice. And I deliberately like leave my tongue a little bit longer on the top of my teeth in order to create that sound. It's like, somewhere in the night it stopped being a choice. Like, you can hear the little
mm,
bit of the, like, that type of face that comes in there, even though like he might not have actually said it like that, but like you want to sort of have them envision that. So that was
mm,
kind of the overall process, was like picking up on the little things where I was just like, okay, Brett naturally sounds like Keaton. I'm going to act out all the different nuances instead. Like, that's my impression. It's because
yeah,
I know I'm not going to just be able to do the same exact voice, but I'll do the cadences. He's got a very like choppy cadence at times. It's sort of
yeah,
unpredictable how he's going to
yeah,
do it, which made it very difficult when it came to like the longer speeches, because this is a lot of the stuff in the script was not what Keaton, close to what Keaton had done with the character yet. You know, he has much more dialogue than before, and Keaton was famous for cutting lines too in Batman Returns. So I was,
mm,
cursing the writer in myself at this point, because I didn't, when I wrote it, I didn't think that I was going to do it. So now I
yeah,
have to do it. I'm like, great. How
yeah,
how would he do this? So
yeah.
one of yeah, that was one of the big challenges for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and you're approaching a role that hasn't been played by Keaton. Not the role, but a script that he didn't
Mhm,
perform. For the Kilmer version, at least you have the inspiration of the source material of actually watching the movie and how he performed many of the lines that are similar.
mhm,
But in the Keaton version, you're kind of having to imagine maybe how Michael Keaton would have played that scene or that
mhm,
part. And and that's kind of the whole point of the audio drama, in that kind of what if.
mhm,
And again, you're right, it's not visual, it's audio. So, when I'm listening to it and I'm realizing I'm not having a hard time at all imagining this is actually Michael Keaton, because obviously we've all known the movie as Val Kilmer
mhm,
and Chris O'Donnell and all of that, and just the visual optic of the Schumacher verse, of just the vibrancy of that. But now imagining it in Tim Burton's more gothic style, and then just seeing Keaton's Bruce or Batman, you know it was very easy to do that listening to you
mhm.
portray him. So I mean, it's and also at the end of the day, just to be like, I'm Batman. Like, I mean, that's got to make you feel pretty good.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Um, so, so let me just say thanks for playing Batman.
Thanks for casting me.
Yeah, for sure. Double Batman, really.
Mm,
But I think he did great. I love how it came out. It worked out well. And then so after that, you did lines for Kilmer. What was your approach? Because you talked a lot about your approach to
mm,
Keaton. I mean, all of that makes sense because he does have a very kind of interesting way of, like you said, of kind of starting his lines and or when he
mm,
goes into something and you mentioned like talking on the side of his mouth and
mm.
how did you approach Kilmer's Batman?
So Kilmer, I realized one of the big differences is that he sounds rich, whereas Keaton sounds more like he's a blue collar guy who just happened upon wealth. It was a big
Yeah,
difference in the approach, right? So like
yeah,
there's a more, it's not like a British accent, but there's more of a like upper class New England type of feel to him, even though Kilmer's from SoCal like me. But like that was the take that he had into it. So uh, I think one of the reasons why it was easier to slip into Kilmer for me is I personally just think I naturally sound a little bit closer, but I obviously still have to put a little bit more affectation to it. But I think part of it is sounding closer, but also the other part of it was just I grew up with this movie, and he was the
Mm,
Batman who said the lines. So it was
yeah,
way easier for me to just like, oh, like I know how he said it, and then I would do that because this has been in my head for like 30 plus years.
mm,
And then when I came to doing it, or how I was slipping into Kilmer, I realized what helps is if Keaton is like choppy in the cadence, right? Especially as Bruce Wayne, Kilmer is like this flow to him. There's this flow in terms of how he says um, certain things. So instead of in terms of the somewhere in the night it stopped being a choice, with Keaton it's very like choppy rhythm to it, whereas it's more of a flow with Kilmer. It's like
yeah,
somewhere in the night it stopped being a choice. Like it all kind of flows together.
mm,
And I realized as well that I would because I had this idea of what he sounded like in the movie, and then before I started recording, I'm like, all right, let me just double check, and then I rewatch parts of it again, and I was like, oh, he didn't deliver that the way I thought he did.
mm,
And I think
right.
some of that is I'm used to the Batman voice where he had a little bit of a Conroy type of approach, where it was both a little bit like deeper, more baritone.
Hmm.
It's also like this, the best way I can describe it is like the swelling type of voice to it. Like, discovered a way to read men's minds, like that type of thing. Like it sort of swells up type of feel
Mm,
to it, almost
yeah,
like a
yeah.
serious Adam West type of thing. But then when he's Bruce Wayne, he doesn't really do that as much, other than when he's like projecting over the music in the Enigma Tech party about, getting projecting things out of the mind. So when it came to his regular Bruce Wayne stuff, it was like, oh, he just has a very soft type of voice, like that
Hmm.
type of. So I kind of took my own voice and just made it much softer when it came to his stuff, but still with the flow. So if you make it softer but with the flow to it, it creates a little bit closer to that feel. Because I wanted to make sure that I was staying true to his approach as well, and I realized in doing all this that I had to do like four different voices. Really, it was regular Michael Keaton Batman, and
Hmm.
then regular Val Kilmer with a softer
Yeah,
Bruce Wayne, and
yeah.
then Kilmer's Batman. And so it was a lot back and forth. I think Kilmer, I had at one point even considered asking you, because we did do a previous Kilmer one with Night of the Reaper, and I had
Right.
remembered being tempted to ask you like, hey, like could I give it a shot? Because I think I was maybe working on it a little bit, but then I wasn't
Mm,
confident in it. I was like, like
yeah.
we'll see. He might already have a guy, and then like Brett did a great job with that one too. So I'm like, all right, well, let's just give Brett all the Batman ones because he can do it better than me. But then this is funny how things come around, because now that
Yeah.
I'm working on it, I was like, oh, like I feel like I could do it, and I'm grateful that things lined up the way that they were, because with the Batman '89 and Batman Returns stuff, that's already done, and that's one
Mhm.
where like it really kind of has to match up what you remember. Whereas with this alternate type of stories that we're doing, you mainly just have to make it close enough to picture that actor there.
Yeah.
Um, and then with this one, it's pretty much it felt easier to do because of the like impersonation type aspect of it from a performance that's already there versus a performance that's not already there. But I think a bigger challenge for me was making sure that I didn't say it the same way as I previously did it, because this is now my second time doing it,
Yeah.
still as Bruce Wayne Batman, but a
Mm.
different Bruce Wayne Batman. So now I had to make different choices, which then got a little tricky with. There's some parts where I feel like I kind of did the same thing, but then it's also because when you look at how Kilmer did it, sometimes as Batman, you're like, oh, I can see Keaton say the same, bats aren't rodents, Dr. Meridian, in the same way. So
Mm.
it's tough. It's tough to do that. And I think overall, one of the discoveries I made too is that I find Bruce Wayne to be harder to play than Batman.
Mm.
Um, I know that you've done the role too with the Batman audio drama. I know
Mm.
there's only like
Right.
a couple scenes in that, and that's a Bruce that's very much like in Batman mode, no matter whether he's in the costume or
Yeah.
not.
True.
So I don't know if you feel the same way, but for me, it's I think Bruce is much tougher because with Batman, a lot of the lines is in some ways either like exposition or he's threatening somebody. It's
Mhm.
usually, which is much easier. Like put that down, Enigma, like that type of stuff is much
Yeah.
easier versus like Bruce, who is actually going through, especially in this script, going through trauma or reliving his trauma, or is hiding things. Right, he's hiding things from other people. He's hiding things during his scenes of chase. He's things that she's saying is getting through to him, but he has to play it off as if it's
Mhm.
not, like that type of stuff. I think that was way harder.
Mhm.
And funny enough, it all circles back to Janet Batchelor, who's one of the original writers. One of the fortunate things I got to have in my life was going to a school where Janet Batchelor taught
Oh
for
wow.
screenwriting. And that's how we had a meeting, and that's how I got her onto the show. Is to talk, just talking to her about her time on Batman Forever. And one of the things that she said that stuck out to me, especially when Robert Pattinson was cast, was she says like most of the time it's a stuntman who plays Batman. What you're casting for is Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne is the actual role.
Mhm.
That always stuck with me, and it kind of came back around where now I'm adapting her script into an audio drama, and I'm like,
Mm.
yep, she was right because this is a very Bruce Wayne centric story. I'm pretty sure there's definitely more lines as Bruce Wayne than as Batman in
Oh
that story.
yeah. Definitely.
So that's how that came to be. But yeah, that was my process for both of them, was you kind of have to noticing the two different voices, and now, and I'm still like going back and looking at different clips for when I'm, because we have other projects in mind,
Mm.
um, so that I don't like get too comfortable, or find other things that they could add in.
Yeah, it's definitely been a discovery of how different these two Batmen are because, it's interesting, even like just rewinding back to that time where they're going to bring on a new Batman. And not only is
Mhm,
it someone that definitely looks different than Keaton, he's
mhm,
taller than Keaton, but also his voice and his cadence and the way that he talks is completely different. And now you've lived that out.
yeah.
And I noticed because for me, I'm listening to both and then I'm adapting, one and then I'm adapting the next. And
Mhm,
the thing that I recognized about Kilmer's Batman, just right out of the bat when I was editing the first like prologue or opening scene where he's monologuing, and the way that I described it in my mind was, well, Kilmer kind of like talks in cursive, like it's almost like this. You said you see you mentioned it's funny you mentioned it too. It's like he's not British, but I thought about the tune. It's almost like British, but with an American accent.
yeah.
Is another way that I said it to myself was that
Mhm,
there's something more regal about the way that he talks. There's something a little bit more like provoking and clear and I mean, you definitely described it better, but yeah, there's just a completely different voice, not just in the fact that he has his own voice, but he's not even trying. It's not like he was trying to do like the Keaton. It
mhm,
is a new Batman. It's a different Batman, and then Clooney came in and did his own thing too.
mhm,
So it was very very inconsistent Batman film series, really, because of that. But it's interesting. But I did also want to say that I commend our entire cast on both
oh
projects.
yeah.
Some of
Mhm,
them are the same because you don't really change out Alfred or Gordon and stuff like that. But
mhm,
you have Riddler, that's different. You have Two Face,
mhm,
and I'm really really proud of how everyone voiced these characters. I knew all along that I wanted to play Chris O'Donnell's Robin.
mhm,
I've always felt like I had a kind of youthful kind of voice. That's why I've never tried to do Batman other than Pattinson's Batman because he was the only one that I felt was in my wheelhouse. I can't do Kevin Conroy, I can't do Christian Bale, but Pattinson was one where it's like, well, he's kind of doing this kind of whispery, kind of
Mhm.
slurring his words a little bit, kind of monotone
Oh, yeah.
voice, and
Yeah. I know that, you had Simon do the Pattinson Batman for a while, and
yeah, that's
he's
true.
great. He's great, but then
Yeah,
when I heard yours, I was like, "Oh," like, if we're talking different Batman, I'm like, "I can't do that." Like, that's much closer to what's in the movie and what we've seen so far from Pattinson. So, no, I mean,
yeah.
you've been a great Pattinson Batman,
Oh, thank you.
I really I could really definitely hear the spirit of Chris O'Donnell with your Robin, and I've said this to you before offline too, but it's like it gives you the opportunity to even picture even like younger version of him because of the fact that this is audio and so much of the script is on how like Bruce is adopting him. You know, Gordon's just like Bruce Wayne, adopt a kid. Like you have
Mm,
to picture like someone who's an actual teenager. So like I could
yeah,
see a teenage, you know, a younger Chris O'Donnell, a teenage Chris O'Donnell that the script was describing through your versions, but still Chris O'Donnell in the way that a lot of the ways that you said the lines. You know, I had chills. I get chills each time I get to the part where
oh wow.
um you first appear in the Robin suit in the Batcave with you know, because I'm doing the whole like, you know, by sea or by air, and you're like, why not both? And I'm just like, oh, this just feels like we just took a clip from the movie.
Oh wow. I mean, and I think another cool thing about it was that like we have the writer and we have the producer, so to speak, play, playing Batman and Robin. Like
Mhm.
it's funny because I think in the description on YouTube I put Ben Wan from Superhero Stuff You Should Know and Newverse Creative team up to bring you blah blah
Oh yeah,
blah.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm like, well, me and him also teamed up as Batman and Robin, so it's like we are the dynamic
yeah.
duo in more ways
Mhm,
than one.
mhm.
And I think with Chris O'Donnell's Robin again, I felt like I had a kind of a youthful voice that I could do it, but I was still trying to even bring up the tone of my voice even higher because I'm in my 30s and I'm trying to play someone that was still in his probably early 20s when he played Robin. But I think the result was more of a kind of teen angsty kind of, well, he's already angsty in the movie, but
Mhm.
it did sound more like kind of teenage, which is kind of how I've always wanted to imagine Robin anyways, is that
Yeah,
he's a
exactly.
teenager, he's a kid, he really is being adopted, he really can't be on his own. And so I didn't even intend to play it that way, but it kind of inadvertently came out that way, which I'm okay with. And just having a chance to play a character in this was a lot of fun.
Mhm.
Again, I would have loved to play like Riddler or something, but obviously I want it to sound good, and if I'm going to play a role, it needs to be one that kind of same as you wanted, like, can I actually do this?
Mhm.
And so like, and if it came out terrible, I wouldn't have used it. Would have just casted
Yeah.
someone else. But I was happy with it, and I love being able to do stuff with emotion, like the scene where he's punching Batman, and he's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
if you had told Two Face who you were at the circus, and just being able to get into the gritty, parts of the story and flesh that out. And the other interesting thing is that, I think when you read the script, you do imagine a teenage Robin, but even in the movie Batman Forever, there's that line where Bruce Wayne says, "How about Dick Grayson, college student?" So they're
Mhm.
not avoiding the fact that he is an adult, but I think there's a part of me, and I think I've always been this way. Watching the movies, like I really wish he was a teenager. Like I
Yeah.
really wish he was younger.
Mhm.
And I think for probably a myriad of reasons, they didn't go that route. But inadvertently in the audio drama, you can kind of imagine maybe a younger teenage Robin, and then in the Burton version, you can imagine a young Marlon Wayans,
For sure, yeah.
um, playing that role, which is I think something that the internet's talked about so many times
Mhm.
is Burton's casting for Robin. And so I kind of want to segue into maybe the last part of this conversation, which is
Sure.
maybe you can help us debunk some of the theories, but also give us some of the Easter eggs. I know you threw in
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple things like action figure wise, which I don't know if you guys can
Mhm.
see. I have my newly released Batman Forever action figures,
Oh,
which
yeah,
I
I
know
got
you and I have geeked about. There you go.
yeah.
I know we've geeked about these several
Mhm.
times in conversation because when I first heard about this, I freaked out. I was like, no way. I had all these toys when I was a kid. And unfortunately, you don't have many of them anymore, but it was great to be able to buy this line
Mhm.
and get them. But I know you threw in some Easter eggs regarding action figures.
Mhm.
So maybe walk us through some of the things because you have a big brain when it comes to this, and I know
Thanks.
you have a lot. Tell
Mhm.
us about Batman Forever. Tell us about some of the maybe theories that people have about it, debunk maybe some of it,
Right.
and then kind of how you threw in some of the Easter eggs.
Yeah. So in terms of the overall history, I think the internet's perception of this is that like, oh, this is originally a Tim Burton story, and he wanted Michael Keaton as Batman, and Robin Williams as Riddler, and Billy D. Williams as Two Face, and Marlon Wayans as Robin, and Rene Russo as Chase Meridian, and it turns out that that's not actually how it went down. Of course, I realize that all I'm doing is now feeding into that perception by writing Tim Burton's Batman 3, where we have that cast. But
Yeah.
it was still at this point. It was like you might as well just throw that in, like imagine it, because it's just like okay, it's the idea of a Robin Williams Riddler has been in people's fan minds for so long. Why wouldn't we do this? Why wouldn't we do this in Tim Burton's Batman 3? And shout out to Nick Gonzalez for doing such a fantastic job
Yes.
as Riddler, because that was, I mean, I know that we were talking about how tough my role was with Keaton, but I think the Riddler one was the most difficult one. And I think that Nick he just hit it out of the park, and even like this would not have worked without Nick's Robin Williams in there. That's just the way
Yeah.
that he emulates it, and you can see in the comments too. Like people love him. People love this.
Yeah, and just to comment on that really quick, just
Mhm.
also huge kudos to Nick, and he's done voices for us before. He's an impressionist, and he's amazing. And I think the hard thing about tackling Robin Williams as the Riddler is you're not just impersonating Robin Williams, you're impersonating all the stuff that Robin Williams does. Like there's even I can't remember the line, but there's a part where Nick goes into like a Mrs. Doubtfire kind of voice. And I was just like, dude, yes. Like, because if you imagine, and that's kind of the point of imagining Robin Williams
Mhm.
is the what if he had played the role where he would have taken the character in places that Jim Carrey either never would have or never could have, because it just wasn't in his vernacular to do so. Robin Williams truly would have played it a lot differently.
Mhm.
And even when he does the Irish accent and he just does all that stuff. But yeah, you're not just playing, you're not just doing a Robin Williams voice. You got to tap into all the little impersonations that he does when he's doing these,
Yeah.
comedic roles. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, huge kudos to him.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yep.
So, in terms of Robin Williams's role, he was up for Riddler, but a lot of people chalk it up to that being Tim Burton's choice. He was actually
Yeah.
Schumacher's. It was the script came from the Bachelors, who wrote it for Robin Williams. They pictured Robin Williams, and if you look at the very first appearance of Riddler in the comics, he looks like Robin Williams. Like it almost looks like they modeled him off of Robin Williams, even though this is from 1940. So
Yeah.
it's very close. It's very close. And so the overall process that Janet Batchelor told us on my show, as well as me and other conversations, was she was hired by Tim Burton, but Tim Burton was already on his way out. He was basically he's given you see his producer credit on Batman Forever because he helped pass the torch. He gave the approval for Joel Schumacher to direct. He gave the approval to the Bachelors to do the script, and he was really compelled by what they had to say about the nature of duality, which is the big theme, right, for this movie. You've got
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne and Batman almost kind of at war with each other. You've got the whole like, can Bruce Wayne and Batman truly coexist? You've
Mhm.
got Dick Grayson, who's also Robin. You've got Riddler, who's also Edward Nigma, and which I thought was really clever, considering that there's never really been an explanation in the comics of why Riddler has a disguise, why he even bothers wearing a mask. And this one, like, it's still the best take, where in terms of an explanation for it, we're like, well, it's because he's got his own alter ego. He's Edward Nigma, his own corporate tech genius by
Yeah.
day. And then, of course, there's Two Face, right? There's clearly the duality's all in there. But when they were brainstorming it, one of the things that came up was that Joel Schumacher, he's already the director. Joel Schumacher already wants Tommy Lee Jones as Two Face in this. Schumacher had already worked with Tommy Lee Jones on other movies like The Client, and so that was kind of already a thing. And so they said that's the first thing that needs to be in there is that villain, as well as the studio mandate that there had to be two villains. So the Bachelors were like, all right,
Mm.
well, it kind of just makes the most sense to bring in the next famous Batman villain who hasn't been in these movies yet, who's the Riddler. So this whole thing of Batman versus Two-Face and Riddler does not come from Tim Burton. It does come from Joel Schumacher. And
Mm.
then since Schumacher was very much, to him, it was Batman and Robin, not just Batman. he wanted to finally bring Robin into the movies because there had been attempts to bring Robin into the '89 movie and Returns, famously with Tim Burton casting Marlon Wayans in Batman Returns, but that didn't end up panning out. And this time Schumacher wanted his own Robin. So again, Batman Robin versus Two-Face and Riddler. This is all Joel Schumacher and the Bachelors. Chase Meridian is an original character created during this collaboration with Rene Russo as the one that they had in mind for the role. So again, Schumacher's choice, not Burton's. And like what's out there is somewhat accurate in the sense that we could have gotten Michael Keaton as Batman in this movie. We could have gotten Rene Russo as Chase Meridian in this movie. We could have gotten Robin Williams as Riddler, but it's all in Joel Schumacher's movie, the context of Joel Schumacher's movie.
Yeah.
And I think fans just sort of lump in, they lump that together with Burton, and then they lump in, well, Burton also wanted Marlon Wayans as Robin in return, so naturally that would have happened. And if it's Two-Face, well, we saw Billy D. Williams in '89, and he never really got to play it, at least until the Lego Batman movie. But like he never got to play it in like live action.
Right.
And so that's kind of, I think, how the fan creation has come about. And now we've brought it to life, despite me spending years on my podcast being just like, yeah, that wasn't actually the thing. But I think it's fine at this point because it's like, look, give the fans what they want. I think, and it's such a fun audio to listen to with that cast in mind. But that's kind of that's sort of the true history of how the development came together for this. And when it came to Easter eggs, I can reveal a few. I know that one of the things that you brought up was the action figures. And so for those who are listening, the script is 99.9% the same in Batman 3 and Batman Forever, the Schumacher cut audio drama, except for one part which I had asked you and Simon to do, and you were both gracious enough to do it for me, which is that when Batman rescues Robin in like around Claw Island, before they get to Claw Island, when it's in the water, it's described that the frogmen fire at Deep Dive Batman in the Burton version, right? Because that's the Keaton action figure. But when it was Schumacher verse, I was like, look, the previous Burton movies, we can kind of generally understand that that's the backstory, so the references are fine. But Deep Dive Batman feels like it's just very Keaton, and there was an equivalent action figure for Kilmer, which was Manta Ray Batman. And so I asked, could we just change that part to be that they fire on Manta Ray Batman instead in the Schumacher one? And you were both gracious enough to do that for that audio. So like it was great to hear that, because like I was listening to the Forever one, just anticipating that part, so I could hear it. And the
great. Cool thing about that, just really quick, sorry to interrupt, but
no, go ahead.
Yeah, the cool thing about the Manta Ray Batman was that a couple years ago, I was like, this is before they re-released, this line. I was like, man, I really want to go and try and find some of these action figures, because I had almost all of them as a kid from Batman Forever, Batman and Robin mostly, because that's when those movies were coming out, was when I was like of the age to be, having all these. I mean, I did have Batman Returns, Batman '89 action figures as well. I just didn't have as many. I mostly had Batman Forever, Batman and Robin. And so I had the Manta Ray Batman as a kid and didn't have it anymore. Obviously, I unfortunately got rid of like a bunch of pretty much all my toys when I grew up, which is like, I mean, just watch Toy Story 3. It'll break your heart when Andy gives his toys away. It's like, don't do it. Like the kid in you saying, don't do it. Keep the toys. Because that's what I wish I did. Because now that I have kids now that are getting older and they love all these characters. And I'm like, I wish I could show them all my toys. I could only show them pictures.
Yeah.
Like, hey, look, I had this one, I had that one. And I'm like, well, maybe I could just buy these, And, so I started going to eBay and stuff and trying and buying a few of them. And the first one I bought was Manta Ray Batman. Wow. That was the first one I bought. And I remember when it came in the mail and I showed it to my son, I showed it to my oldest son who loves Batman, and he thought it was the coolest toy because it is such a great action figure. So when you asked me to include that in the Forever version, I was like, I have to. I have to honor the child in me to include the Manta Ray Batman. And I think for us like nerds and geeks that had the action figures and actually remember them, or we'll be the only ones to recognize maybe that difference or what it's referring to. So thank you for thinking to include it, because I wouldn't have even thought to do that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. since we're talking about the action figures, I'm going to bring up something that I've brought up to you when it comes to these Spin Master reissues from Target, because I know I've seen some criticism about these of just like, well, you can just get the regular figures from Kenner on like eBay or something. Why do you need these? And I'm like, well, out of the ones that I saw, this is the one that I wanted, not just because, and part of that was because like, well, I voiced the character in two different versions, so like I kind of need to have it. But
Yeah.
the other aspect is that I had been in through the research. There is a sculpt of Michael Keaton in a sonar suit, Batman Forever looking suit, right? Like that sculpt's been online for a while, and I got confirmation from Taurus D on Twitter is his handle, but he used to work on Kenner at Kenner, and I was like, hey. So there's a sculpt of Keaton that's been going around, sculpted by Jose Fernandez, and people are saying it's what was originally meant for Batman 3, and I it's got to be legit because it looks really, really close to how they sculpt the Kenner Batman, right?
Yeah.
And so he
Big time.
confirmed like, oh yeah, like that was originally what Keaton's suit was going to
Mhm.
look like, not just in the sonar suit stuff, but that actually was going to be the main suit for that. So even though it kind of looks like the sonar suit at the time, it was going to be the main suit. And then when Kilmer signed on, elements of that turned into the sonar suit at the end, and they gave Kilmer his own, what they call the Panther suit. And so I was like, oh, now I got to have this because it's a Batman 3 action figure. When you
Hmm.
think about it, like
Yeah.
it's you can just imagine if you squint a little, you can see that's Keaton. And then I was looking into the Kenner versions, and I'm like, okay, none of the Kenner versions actually have him in the black and yellow. You know what does is the Spin Master reissue. Like just by just cosmic coincidence or whatever, the very year that we released these is the same year that they released. This is what could be the closest that we get to an action figure of what Keaton would have looked like in
Right.
the movie,
Yeah.
and I thought that was an amazing thing. So that was definitely something that I loved, and I made sure to go out and get it once I had finished recording my lines as a reward for myself because I'm like, this is this is my version technically. So
Yeah.
it was great. Let's see. In terms of other Easter eggs, some people might catch on that at one point I say that Edward's real last name is Heckendorf, and
Right. Yep.
that comes from the original Bachelor script. That comes from when he was under the name Lyle Heckendorf in that script. And I know we talked a little bit about it in the brainstorming of it because I was like, technically that's in the Bachelor script, but I just feel like everyone who knows the comics and listening is just going to be like, why is he named Lyle Heckendorf? Like that seems weird. Like it would just be distracting. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to throw them a bone and say that that was his original last name, and he changed it to Enigma because he wanted to have his name be Enigma. So
Which is a
uh,
good explanation because, and I actually like that because
mhm,
it's like, why is it that this, character just happens to have the last name Nigma so
mhm,
that his first initial and last name sound like Enigma? Like, what are the chances? And he becomes the Riddler.
yeah,
I love that in your version that you wrote, just kind of using the different versions of the scripts, is it's because he did that purposely. And we have the narration, you have the narration say to
mhm,
make his name sound like Enigma. And so
yeah,
I think that's obviously a good compromise between the original script calling him Lyle Heckendorf, which is, I'm always wondering why they even changed his name
mhm,
from the comics in the first place. But it was a clever way to include it, to go to to track back to that script and to at least let that live in some way in this adaptation. So
mhm.
that was really clever.
Thanks.
Yep.
Um, and then I think something to point out is that whenever there's a reference to the previous Burton movies, that's not creative license from me. That's actually in the previous scripts. I basically just looked through all of them to see where the references were
Hmm.
and just put them in, but I didn't add anything. So
Yeah.
there's mentions of, Joker, there's mentions of Catwoman and Penguin, like all
Right.
those are in the original scripts. I did not add any of those. And one of the big reasons why I wanted to do the original Bachelor's version of the third act in Claw Island, where it's a little bit more of, it's the theta radiation stuff that's creating all these illusions in the Hall of
Mhm.
Mirrors, is that I just thought it would have been cool to have the part where Catwoman, Penguin, and Joker show up. Like you were supposed to see them.
Mhm.
There obviously was going to be archive footage,
Yeah.
and I think I just wrote it in that you could put maybe sound effects to indicate them or Joker's laugh.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't really expecting um, what ended up really happening, which is where you took audio clips from the previous dramas and we could actually hear them, which of course made sense. But I was like, look, you're the one who's editing a very long script. Sorry again about that, but you're editing a very long script, so
That's
it's down
okay.
to you on whether or not you want to put in like longer stuff. But it was a great choice. Like it did make it more rewarding when we got there, because it really shocked me when we got to that point, because I was looking forward to like, okay, let's see how that part comes together, and it
Yeah.
it was great.
Yeah,
It
that
was
was
great.
definitely kind of getting into a little bit of I don't know, fan service, or just kind of like just taking it a step further, because, since it's audio, that's the only leverage you have
Mhm.
to paint the picture of what's happening.
Yeah.
And so if there was, and I love that it was in the script, it wasn't something that we just came up that these characters might actually pop up.
Mhm.
Obviously, I just elaborated it a little bit, and embellishing it a little bit with some lines, but it was just since we can't visually show them because it's an audio drama, well, let's give them some lines. And thankfully, I'd worked with these characters in previous projects, so I had the lines recorded. And it was funny because here I am getting to the end of the project, getting close to finally finishing it, and I usually don't actually have it in me to spend extra time. But I'm like, I'm just going to sit down and spend some extra time, go through all the lines from previous projects. I
Wow.
opened up the scripts, I opened up the audio files, and I'm listening through, and I'm trying to find ones that, what is maybe something Catwoman would say to maybe taunt Batman? What is something that maybe Penguin was the hardest, because there really wasn't anything that was like, I'm gonna get you, or just something really like antagonizing. There just wasn't really there. So I'm trying to think of the one I used, but I used something. Oh, I think yesterday's victory is tomorrow's vape, or something
Paper.
like that,
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
today's something like. I think I just butchered it, but you know what I mean. That was the only one, and that on top of the fact that it was recognizable because it's
Mhm.
from the movie. And then the Joker, thankfully I had done some projects where we had a Jack Nicholson Joker, but it wasn't the '89 script. And so I was
Mhm.
able to take something from the Englehart audio dramas that we had
Mhm.
done, where we did do a Jack Nicholson voice, and take something from that where he said, "I'm going to get you one of these days." And I'm like, I like that. Like, if
Mhm.
if Jack Nicholson's Joker is going to come in and say something that he hasn't said before, I love something like, "Hey, I'm going to get you. I'm after you." Just something super antagonizing and haunting, and it makes me think of the potential Batman Unchained project that we've
Mhm.
talked about offline,
Mhm.
where I think, which was like the pretty much the canceled Batman, one of the canceled Batman 5 ideas
Mhm.
of a follow up story to Batman and Robin, where there supposedly was a sequence. The real script never surfaced online, but there's a supposed sequence where Batman hallucinates his previous foes. And so that's what we did with Batman Forever.
Mhm.
Reminds me of maybe what could have happened in that story, where he's hallucinating Catwoman and Joker, and in that version probably Two-Face and Riddler.
Mhm.
And maybe they're haunting him, and they're antagonizing him, and they're doing all this. So I was like, well, this is my chance to kind of bring something like that to life, and then maybe someday we will do Batman Unchained,
Mhm.
probably our own version of it. But in any case, I said a lot there, but yeah, that was just me being a little bit creative and embellishing your script a little bit. So sorry for doing that, but
Oh,
um,
no. It was
I
great.
just
I loved that.
oh, okay, thank God.
And then I think one of the things I really loved, that this is less about an Easter egg that I put in, but more of what you put in, which is, the music. The music in
Mm,
this, because I had heard previous Nuverse audios, and obviously, given that this is a fan made thing, I know that we're trying to find stuff that isn't going to be like found by Warner Brothers Music to be
mm,
taken offline and that type of stuff. So
yeah,
I was kind of just expecting music like was in the past, where it was stuff that gave the feel of it, but wasn't necessarily like from the actual score.
yeah,
But I think this is the
yeah,
first major one where I'm like, oh, this is the actual score. And not
yeah,
only that, it contains music that is like was unused in Batman '89 that's now in this. And
right.
so one part that and I don't know if this is one that was deliberate on your part or you knew this, but like there's this music that plays when Bruce is at Chase's apartment, when she's talking about how he's discovering her obsession with Batman, and she's talking about like, why does a man do this, all this type of stuff. The music that's in the
Mhm.
background was a deleted music cue that was supposed to play when Bruce visited Vicky Vale in her apartment in Batman
Mm.
'89. So I'm like, oh, well, this is just perfect because it all just comes around
Mm.
at that point. So
Yeah, that
that was
wasn't
great.
even intentional. I knew that it was obviously an unreleased track. I didn't know what scene it was for. I didn't know all the details. And that whole trying to fit the music with the scene is one of the hardest parts just because you're trying to find something that works as an underscore for like the dialogue and the
Mhm,
sound effects and the narration. Like there's a thousand factors. There's, does it work with the timing, the pacing? Sometimes I have to kind of cut and paste a little bit, fade in, fade out, just to make it work, because
mhm,
obviously this music was not tailored for my audio drama at all. None of the music that I've used is. I'm
mhm,
using stuff that's already created and I'm just trying to weave it into what I'm making. And the music I do just like from an editing standpoint, I do all the voices first. I edit all that, get it all kind of laid out.
mhm,
And then I do the music and then sound effects I do last. So the music kind of really has to fit what I've laid out. And so it is a challenge, but I'm glad in that case it sounds like it was a happy accident to
mhm,
use that particular track. But yeah, for this one I wanted to use the music from the films because I wanted it to really bring you into that world, that when you hit play and you're listening to this, yeah, you have the voices that sound like Keaton, thanks to you and
yeah,
Kilmer.
thanks. Mhm,
Yeah, and Tommy Lee Jones's Two-Face and so on and so forth. Like not only are you hearing that, but to hear the actual music, um, for me, obviously, I'm a fan as much as I'm, being a part of creating it. I want it to feel like that world, as much
mhm,
as possible, as much as we can, since we're not making a movie, we're just making an audio drama. And so again,
mhm,
audio is the only leverage we have to
mhm,
put the listener in that world. And so I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to use the music. Obviously I had to be very selective about which tracks I use so that I can post it without it getting flagged. And so, but I wanted to bring the listener into that world as
mhm.
much as possible. So
Oh, for
happy
sure.
accident on that one. Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
that is a cool little Easter egg, if you will. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
just a lot of the musical choices, just in general, were ones that I revisited, and I do like Elliot Goldenthal's work on it, but it's the Elfman music, the Elfman score that's always brought me back to that version, and I just got so many chills when it was the music from the Wayne murders that keeps playing whenever Bruce and Dick are talking about their traumas, or
Yeah.
the especially Descent into Mystery. Like we've
Yeah.
it was the first time I listened to that Batcave scene where the bat comes out and you paired up Descent into Mystery with it. I was like, this is better than watching the deleted scene. This is-
Wow.
I know I know I'm partially part of this, so it's like patting myself on the back, but it's really
Yeah.
your
You're
choices
biased.
that
Yeah.
paired with it. Yeah, it's your choices that paired up with it because I just basically pasted in the script description of it from a writing standpoint on my end, and I have like 2 lines in that sequence, but it's really like it's the narration from the script mixed with the Elfman music
Hmm.
that he put in, and just the timing of it, and just how it's done. And that's the first thing that I re-listened to when I went back. It was just like this is better than I thought it was going to be in terms of what this really important scene, the scene that everyone wants to see in the Schumacher cut. Uh, this really brings it to life. So
Yeah.
it was great.
Yeah, and again, I think it's like a thank you, for saying that. And I think a lot of it was just, happy accident, but a lot of it was trying to create that emotion and kind of just invoke what was happening through the music. Because I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Elfman score. I always have been. I like the Golden Thaw. It's very, triumphant and fun and just it's completely different. I think we touched on that earlier.
Mhm,
But with the Elfman version, there's such an emotion, and it was such a discovery for me editing this script with that music because there are those scenes, those emotional scenes where the music and your performance, of course, and the Robin performance
mhm,
that just invokes that emotion in the Burton version that isn't quite there in the Schumacher version. I feel
mhm,
like the lines are there. They're very similar to the movie, but with set in the kind of Burton and Elfman underscore, I was like, wow, I feel like it's far more emotional. There's
Yeah.
something more. There's more gravity. There's more weight to the words and to the connection between Batman and Robin, or Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson, of what's happening there. That emotional connection that they have. And speaking on emotion, goes outside the music, but the other
Mhm.
scene that I never like fully grasped, which is crazy, but I never fully grasped the emotional weight of it, was until your script, which is where Batman catches Robin at the end of
Oh, yeah.
the final climax, and he catches him. He catches him, and you have the narration say something like, just like his father always would, or always. I can't remember exactly. My brain doesn't
Yeah.
work that way. But you know what I'm talking about, where it was reminiscent of a circus act where
Mhm.
his dad would always be there to catch him. And here's a new father figure now catching him.
Mhm.
And I'm like the nerd in me is all misty eyed, because I was like, I'm remembering the scene in the movie, and I'm like, that's right. He's just like the scene where his dad catches him in that circus act. And here he is in a similar situation, um, where his new father figure is catching him. I was like,
Mhm.
this is amazing. And I don't know why I never caught that watching the film. It's not till like you hear it actually said that it brought it all full circle for me. And I'm like, that's incredibly emotional. And that's in a 90s Batman movie
It is,
that
yeah.
was really made to sell kids meals, to sell kids meal toys
Mhm.
and merchandise, like the one I'm wearing right now,
Mhm.
and so, but it's such an emotional way. I still think that Batman Forever is a good movie. I think it's a good script. I think you did a phenomenal job
Oh, thank you.
of bringing it to life in a whole new way, obviously adapting some of the original ideas from the Bachelor script, obviously adapting it in the Burton verse. It's an emotional story, emotional characters. I love what you did bringing to life the whole Red Leather Book subplot,
Mhm.
all of that. I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of what you did writing it. I love listening to it. Love listening to your performance.
Thank you, yeah.
Um, I think it's great, man. I'm proud that I got to be a part of it, you know?
Oh, yeah. I mean, me too on my
Mm.
end, right? Like,
Yeah.
again, like I said before, it's a dream come true on multiple levels, like writing the character, getting to play the character, and to do it with this story, right? This
Mm,
story that means a lot to me personally, means a lot to, the podcast that I run, and to be able to bring that to life too. It kind of hit me. I was like, oh, like if I ever did a Batman story, like the characterization of Batman in this version would be how I'd want it to be, like the way that even though I'm doing it through a Michael Keaton or Val Kilmer lens, like
yeah.
it's the version that I would want to play it this way. I would want to do it
Yeah.
like this. So it
Yeah.
was definitely a dream come true on that, and like you said before too, like shout out to the cast for bringing these voices to life, the characters, and definitely um, different things that we had in mind, right? Because like Nick obviously nails the Robin Williams Riddler, but what I
Yeah.
really liked about Austin's version as Jim Carrey was just how much it sounds like Jim Carrey, but Jim Carrey if he's toned it down way, like really toned it down,
Yes, that's true.
really
Yeah.
decided to be more menacing rather than the stuff that kind of felt goofier in the movie. And that
Yeah.
was kind of, I don't know if I really told you that I had that in mind, but when I was putting it through, I was like, it'd be kind of really interesting to hear, like, it's the same lines, it's the same type of voice, but it's just said differently, and
Yeah.
that was brought to life in that Riddler too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's definitely a distinction between, the final product, or the movie,
Mhm,
and definitely what Austin did with his version, which was just less unhinged. It was, because
mhm,
Jim Carrey, I mean, that's probably why he got the role, was because, he comes on set and he just lets loose, and
mhm,
he just becomes this persona, and just obviously I love it, and it's fun, and it's, flabbergastic, and it's all these things. It's animated, but yeah, you're right, bringing it down to more serious, and yeah, so Austin did a good job of kind of making it sound like Jim Carrey, but toned down a bit to where
mhm,
you get a little bit of a different take. And then Tommy Ricard did the Tommy Lee Jones Two-Face, and I
Mhm.
feel like he did it very similar to the movie, just very brash and
Mhm.
wild and crazy. And I think I've read a lot of complaints about that version of Two-Face because they compared it to Jack Nicholson's Joker, where he's like laughing, and he's
Mhm.
wild and just like, why is Two-Face like that? And the reason I like it though is because here's a guy that not only did the acid scar his physical face, but it scarred his brain, and
Mhm.
he doesn't think clearly. And there are moments in the film when he's totally chill and composed,
Mhm.
and there's times when he just snaps. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's the duality that that character would need to have. And I think in, like, say, The Dark Knight, that version has that too, where he just like loses it. I mean, we only see Two-Face for like 5 minutes in that movie, but
Yeah, no.
yeah, not enough. And then they kill him, which is something that I hated, but
Yeah.
um supposedly they killed him.
Mhm.
So, but in any case, yeah, I'm really, really proud of the cast. We had Lauren Sanders play Chase. She did a great job.
Mhm.
We have Alexander Pond as Alfred in both versions. Amazing.
Oh, he's
We
great,
had,
especially
yeah,
the part where Alfred's talking to Bruce about like, "Oh, like, it's because you never actually faced your fears," and all that type of stuff. It was just,
mhm,
like, it's the perfect Alfred moment for that part. That's where he really gets
yeah,
the feeling.
yeah. Feels right. It sounds right. I love it. We have Lauren King as Gordon.
Mhm.
Did a great job. Sounds really kind of Um, to me, it sounds like Gordon. I just love the way it sounds.
Mhm.
Let me pull up the cast really quick for the Burton version. I just want to give quick shout outs to all
Christopher
of our voice
Anderson
actors.
for,
What's that?
Christopher Anderson as
Yeah,
Robin.
yeah. Christopher Anderson is Robin. That was a tough role to cast because we're trying to find someone that can bring this kind of urban, youthful
Mhm.
feel. Imagining Marlon Wayans with, and I remember when I was sending messages to some voice actors, I was like, hey, I want him to just have a lot of attitude and just
Yeah.
really, just imagine Marlon Wayans. It's just this young, really kind of energetic kid,
Mhm.
but that goes through this really, traumatic, experience and wanting to become a crime fighter. So he came in, did a great job. I talked to quite a few voice actors about that role till we finally landed, with Christopher, and he did a
Oh, wow.
great job.
Oh,
AJ
yeah.
Carter as Dr. Ames,
Mhm.
he did a great job. He's done, Nick Cage Superman for us. He's done a lot of voices for us, and he's one of my favorite people in the world to work with.
It's funny
Um,
because at one point, because I know I had sent you the script, but I wasn't sure if you were ever gonna ask if you were gonna ask me for any of the parts, and I was like, "Well, maybe if I'm lucky, I'll get to be Dr. Ames."
yeah. Well, thankfully we didn't go that route because I would have had to recast.
Yeah.
That's funny that you say that. That's true. You would have been a good Dr. Ames. You're going to play a doctor in another project, so that's exciting.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
So yeah. And then I think last but not least, there's a couple other smaller roles like Fred Stickley and stuff. But
Yeah,
Derek Willing.
Stickley's
Yeah.
exactly what I was thinking too in terms of
Oh,
just,
that's
like,
true. Yeah.
what if he just doesn't go as broad as Ed Begley Jr.? Because, like, Ed Begley Jr. is like, "Oh, I'm in a, like, live action cartoon," in terms of his performance as
Yeah.
Stickley.
Such a character actor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big personality. Yeah. It's yeah, something a little more down to earth and realistic
Mhm,
is kind of what we wanted to do.
mhm.
And then last but not least, Derek Willingham as Two
Yeah.
Face. He's one of my favorite people on the planet to work with. He's always so easy to work with. He's done some voices for us in the past.
Mhm.
Funny little Easter egg is that he played the ringmaster in the Englehart Batman audio
Oh, yeah.
drama.
Yeah, I
And
remember
it's just
seeing
like a
that.
small little role. He also played the bum in that too. He did such a good job.
Mhm.
And he comes out, and this wasn't in the Englehart script, but I added in there that he's singing a Prince song. So he comes in, he's like, "You don't have to be rich to rule." Yeah, so he does that in the
Oh, nice.
script because I thought it'd be a
Mhm.
cool nod to '89 Batman.
Oh,
Anyway,
nice.
so he played the bum and the ringmaster in that.
Mhm.
So when I was editing Batman and when I was editing Batman 3 and Batman Forever, I grabbed his audio clip of him saying announcing the Flying Graysons, and
Mhm.
I bring that in there, and it's very low, but if you listen, you can hear it, and you hear him say, "The
Wow.
Flying Graysons." That's Derek Willingham
Wow.
as the ringmaster, and obviously in the Batman 3 version, he's also Two-Face.
Right, yeah.
But it was a cool little. It really, it's just for me, it's a little Easter egg to throw in there because I just happen to have that audio clip, and it's segueing from that leprechaun scene to the um to to the performance, the circus
Mhm.
performance starting.
Yeah.
So we have the music kind of swell up, and then you kind of, if you listen close enough, you can hear his voice. And
I
so,
gotta
but
go
yeah,
back.
Derek's great. I'm sorry.
I gotta go back. I gotta go back to listen to that
Yeah,
part. I
yeah,
didn't
you're gonna have
listen
to
to that
listen to it
part,
after
yeah.
this.
But
But
yeah, no,
yeah,
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 I remember just how much he had nailed the Billy D. Williams Two-Face in the Shadows one that we did.
yeah,
Is
that
that
was the
one
first
is
time, yeah, he
that
played that role.
yeah,
Yeah, and I
that's a
hadn't
better
asked him to
telling
do
story.
this,
Good.
but I didn't even think about this, but he's got his normal voice when he's Harvey, because that story had the
Mhm,
Shadows has, he's Harvey Dent and then becomes Two-Face.
mhm,
So he's regular Billy D. Williams esque kind of voice,
mhm,
and then he turns into Two-Face, and now he has this kind of raspy
mhm.
voice that I did not ask Derek to do. He just thought to do that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. Of course he would talk like that. He wouldn't
Yeah.
just be Billy D. Williams angry or whatever or
Mhm,
sinister. It's like, no, now his voice sounds different. And so he had, obviously, in this story, he's really just Harvey Dent. I'm sorry, just Two-Face
Two-Face,
for
yeah.
the most part. And so he does that the whole script, obviously, and we're hoping to bring him back for some future projects. So yeah, Derek's great. Derek, we love you. You're amazing. And
Mhm.
so yeah, we're very fortunate with the cat. We always are. I'm always very fortunate. And then to connect with people like you, not only as just a writer, but as a voice actor.
Mhm.
And just talking about your process a few moments ago was like, wow, this guy's like talking like a professional.
Oh,
I
thanks.
think I think you may have missed your calling, Ben. But
I mean to switch over into that type of career, I guess, but
yeah, I know, right?
I don't know.
Um,
You spoil me with these roles. I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna. I don't know if there's a lot of Michael Keaton Batman voice roles that are out there right now. So
yeah, right, right. Well, hopefully.
we'll see.
But in the meantime, we'll just keep cranking out stories.
Mhm.
So just real quick, Ben, do you anticipate adapting these universes in the future? More Schumacher stuff, more Burton stuff? Do you see us doing more of that?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay.
No, I mean for sure, for sure. I know that we we have sort of teased certain things, and if you look at the end of Shadows, there's a trailer for other stories, stuff. So like there's definitely things that we've done in the past that we've been talking about continuing, right, in terms of stories that expand upon what's there. So the way that I see it, this is kind of just just the beginning of
Yeah.
kind of this new era where I'm like, oh well, now that I'm doing double duty, I just got to keep that in mind when I'm writing it now.
Yeah. 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 I think there's a lot of potential opportunities to go beyond Batman Forever, and then but even pre Batman Forever, going back and adapting stories before that world or
Mhm.
before that story. So yeah, there's a lot of possibilities. We obviously have some ideas of where we're going to go with some future projects, but the great thing is that we have Bruce Wayne and Batman sitting right here,
Oh,
ready to go,
mhm.
to bring you guys a killer performance, and so that's good.
Thanks.
Is there let us know what's going on with what else is going on in your world right now? I know
Sure.
you've worked on Alter Ego, which is your comic. You've actually
Mhm.
worked on a couple different comics. Tell us about that really
Yeah,
quick before we
yeah.
close.
So Alter Ego is my indie comic series. It is going to be the first chapter closes out at 4 issues, and then I'm just going to bump it up to like full graphic novel volumes at that point. Now that I've gotten a little bit
Wow.
more of a feel, but it's essentially a kind of inspired by Batman No Man's Land mixed with like The Departed sort of thing, where
Mhm.
5 families of supervillains have taken over the city, and the main character goes undercover as a henchman for them, not to actually help serve them, but actually to take them all down from the inside and play them off against each other, especially considering the fact that he isn't powerful enough to take them down by force. He has to outthink them, he
Mm.
has to sort of manipulate them in order to destroy each other. And the question comes up in terms of his character of, is this the making of a superhero who's going to like save us all, or is it the making of
Mm.
the supervillain who's just going to clear the board for himself? So it's playing around with your expectations because this is not a set character like Batman, where you're just like, okay, I know Batman's not going to kill the Joker. I
Yeah.
know that Superman is going to do the right thing. This is one where you're like, well, you don't know because this is a completely different world, and this character could go either way as it goes further. So that's one, and then the other one is Musashi and Son. I had released the first volume of it's a manga. I released the first volume a couple months ago or so, and that one is based around the real life samurai Miyamoto Musashi. And the real story goes that he adopted this kid and trained him in order to become a samurai. And when I first heard about that, I was like, oh, that's like the original Batman and Robin. So like it's kind of samurai Batman and Robin. They go from like village to village to protect people and hunt down these bandits who are responsible
Mm,
for making this kid an orphan in the first place. So there's a bit of, Batman Forever or
mm,
Batman and Robin type stuff
I
in there,
love
but
that.
through a samurai lens. Thanks.
Very cool.
So those are in the works in terms of future volumes. So first volume of Musashi and Son, the manga, is out. First two issues of Alter Ego are currently out. So next issue of Alter Ego is in the works. Next volume of Musashi and Son is currently what I'm writing. And then outside of that, superhero stuff you should know is my podcast going over. You can find in our backlog all our different coverage on Batman Forever. But we're producing some short stuff, some reels that you can see
Mm,
on Instagram. But some of those tie into what we just talked about. Some other tidbits that I learned after we produced the audio drama. There's one already out there about Billy D. Williams talking about how he would have approached the role as Two Face. There's another one that will probably be out by the time that we release this, but on like the Robin Williams, the concept art that was actually made for Robin Williams to be Riddler for the Kenner action figure before he ended up not doing the role. And then probably another one on what I was talking about with the Michael Keaton action figure kind of actually being made right with the Batman Forever figure. So like that type of
mm.
stuff will be out, and I'll have other shorts, and if they tie into Newverse stuff that are collaborations, then I'll make sure to plug at the end. But it's definitely going to be it's a busy year. It's a very productive year, I think, where for both our collaborations, my own stuff, my podcast. But I love the stuff. I love diving into this world. Otherwise, like when else would I probably wouldn't spend 10 hours trying to prepare for an audition to be a random character. So
Right.
it had to be this one. This is the only
It
one that I feel
worked
like
out for
is the only
sure.
one.
It worked out.
Thanks.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think if anyone likes what we do at Newverse,
Hmm.
Ben covers a lot of the same scripts and projects, and so there's definitely a cross pollination of some of the stuff that we both cover,
Hmm.
which is really cool. It's almost like we're both an extension of each other, and
Yeah,
so
exactly.
but let me just say a big thank you for being a part of Batman 3 and Batman Forever, writing it,
Mm.
acting in it. I thought it came out amazing. And thank you to all those that have listened to it and supported it. I've gotten a couple really cool or a few really cool comments. I know you mentioned there's a channel, I think you alluded to them, but I think they're called Batman 1995. I think it is. It's a
Oh yeah.
YouTube channel
Yeah, yeah.
that covers, they do a lot of like merch from Batman Forever
Oh
and
yeah.
Batman and
Has he heard
Robin
it?
toys. Yeah, so I was gonna say he just reposted it this morning, the Batman Forever audio drama. I said, hey, I listened to it. It was great, blah, blah, blah. And so I commented on it. I said, well, what an honor. Thanks for sharing the video. So
Mhm.
it sounds like he saw it. I think the one thing he did say is like it's pretty much Batman Forever, but with some new changes.
Yeah.
But either way, I'm honored that
Mhm.
he heard it.
Mhm.
I think he liked it. And so, but
He's
yeah,
also
make
such
sure
a
to
forever expert, that like to him, there's not really a lot
yeah,
of surprises there.
yeah. I mean, yeah, no, you're right about that. So yeah, make sure that everyone is checking out Newverse Creative and superhero stuff you should know, as well as Ben Wan's comic books. Everyone can find those on Amazon, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah. So go to Amazon. There's a little tidbit about those at the end of both of the Batman 3 and Batman Forever audio
Yeah,
dramas.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, we will talk again soon. Thank you for tuning in and watching. And thank you, Ben, for being a part of this and for kind of setting this up. He is the, podcast live stream guru. And so I let you, host this and make this happen. But yeah, big thanks. And yeah, anything else you wanted to add, Ben?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this on. Thank you for producing my writing, and thanks for
Mm,
producing basically the continuation of the 90s Batman in a
mm,
way that it can live on and not just be the few stories, handful of stories that we have. So I'm
Yeah.
very grateful to be a part of it. I'm grateful that we've been collaborating on these. So I look
Yeah.
forward to more.
Absolutely. A lot more to come. We're currently working on a project called Batman Enigma, which
Hmm.
is based on a fan comic. Our good friend, mutual friend, his name is
Ian.
Ian Miller.
Mhm.
He co-wrote and illustrated that comic book. It's online. It's on Facebook. You can read it. It's really, really good. We're adapting a audio drama / motion comic version of that, which will be a first for us. We've never done a motion comic, and so
Mhm.
that'll be a first for us. So be on the lookout for that. We're currently working on
Sweet.
that, as well as some other audio dramas that Ben Wan has written and is writing. So a lot of stuff in the pipeline. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys again soon.
Yep. See ya.